Hi, this is Ron with wordofprayer.com. Today I'll be reviewing the Action Bible. Let me tell you real quick what I plan to do here so that you know where to go in the video for what you're looking for. I'm going to start talking about the big picture up front. Just what is this Bible for? Who's it for? What you might be looking for in this. And then in the middle, we'll do a deep dive and I'll go into some of the details behind the book itself, and we'll flip the camera around and I'll actually show you some of the features inside of the Action Bible so that you can see for yourself and make your own evaluation. And then at the end, I'll come back and give you kind of an overview again, and maybe some recommendations of other places you might want to look if you decide that this is not the Bible for you or for your kids. So with that, let me get right into it. Who is this Bible for? So, you can see from the illustrations, the Action Bible, this is oriented to kids. The publisher says ages 9 to 12. I would say probably 10 plus. So for kids, 10 plus, and I think it really hits the sweet spot for tweens, for those who are not little kids and they're in those in-between years, let's say 10 to 12 to 13, early teen years. It'd be really appropriate for them. Is it limited to that group? No, by no means. I think teenagers will really enjoy this book. Adults as well. If you like graphic novel format, this could really be the perfect book for you. So 10 plus, teens and adults will enjoy it too. What is this for? What would you use the Action Bible for? First of all, just to make it really clear, it is not a Bible in the conventional sense. And by that I mean, it does not have the full contents of the Holy Bible from Genesis to Revelation. It doesn't have every word in the Bible. It is really a storybook Bible with illustrations. You'll see that really clearly when we get into the details in just a second. But I think it's perfect actually for reading and browsing, for getting the big storyline of the Bible clearly in mind, for introducing the story of or the contents of the Bible to kids or to new believers in either case. So that's really what it's ideal for. It's really good for consuming time and just, really being immersed in something for, I think, long stretches. When we bought this for my two boys, and they've read through it multiple times, I'd say at least 5 or 6 times. They were both in that tween sort of time period of life. This is 5 years ago now. And they really got into this book and just loved it, would just sit, engrossed in it for long periods of time. And so it's really good for those purposes. I would say also what it's good for now at our particular point in time is getting kids to read, getting them to be familiar with the Bible, with Bible stories. It's an alternative to online entertainment if you're an adult or even a teen, to refamiliarize yourself with the Bible and particularly get that broad scope of the whole story of the Bible in mind. And maybe to see the Bible stories in a new light because of the way the illustrator does a really superb job of bringing some of the elements of stories to life. So that's why you should be reading and discussing this with your kids as well, even if you're an adult. So it's not just for the kiddos, it's also for you too, parents or adults. It's not, as I may have already implied, a Bible replacement. It doesn't cover the parts of the Bible that are not story. At least it doesn't do it very well. In very bare bones fashion, it does try to fill in some of the gaps. So what does that mean? What we miss in the Old Testament is the law. We miss the poetic books, especially Psalms, but also the other books of poetry, and the prophetic books of the Old Testament. In the New Testament, we miss the New Testament letters and also New Testament prophecy. So what it does really well is it covers Genesis, it covers the historical books of the Old Testament, and the prophetic stories and biographies of the Old Testament really well. It covers the life of Jesus in the Gospels, the Acts, and it does a little bit with Revelation, a little bit with Bible prophecy, the last 3 pages of the book, and that really kind of sums up the whole storyline of the Bible pretty well. but it doesn't go into detail, as you might imagine, in all of the images and symbols, although it illustrates some of those striking symbols from Revelation quite well. So not a Bible replacement, but a great addition and augmentation of the Bible, and a great introduction, I think, of the Bible, especially for younger readers. Let's just get into the details of the book now. So let's take a look at some of the features, the details about the Action Bible. You can see it here on the table. The book itself is hardcover. It measures 6.5 inches across by 10 inches this way in length. It is about 1.5 inches wide on the spine. You can see that here. So it's really a well put together, high quality book. If you need those measurements, it's like 16.5 by 26 centimeters and about 3 centimeters thick. It's pretty hefty. It's a 3-pound book, so about 1.33 kg, but can still sit in the lap of a young child, no problem. Or just maybe they're going to be on their belly on the floor and just have it sprawled out in front of them. So if we open it up, you can take a look and just see the sort of illustrations, and I'll walk you through some of these details in just a second. As I mentioned, I got a copy of this for my 2 boys. We've had it for over 5 years now. It's stood up really well to 2 boys, rough handling it for quite some time. Now, we have had to tape and repair in a number of places because of the rough handling, but compared to other Bibles and other books just in general, it has stood up really well to wear and tear over time. So let's just take a look inside and give you a picture. So there's about 750 pages total. You can see the table of contents here in the very front. It's put up by David C. Cook, and they've done a really high quality job on this production. This one printed 2010. So it is a storybook Bible, and it features 215 of the major stories throughout the Bible. And I'll just have you be able to glance through and see these the contents real quick here. You can see this is all still Old Testament. An interesting thing is it does cover the years between Old and New Testament, which is not in the Bible, but it helps fill in the gaps there. And then in the New Testament, Jesus' life, the church, and then it features some words to the church. It does go into a little bit about the letters of Paul and other writers in the New Testament, not in much detail. And then at the end, we do have a Bible book index. At the end, we've got about 7 pages here where you can actually find the contents by Bible reference and what page you'll find those on in the back here, these 7 pages. So it gives details for you there. And then at the very end, there's actually more about the author, about Sergio Cariello, a man born in Brazil and is really an accomplished artist and has done some great work. And so you can read more about him here, and you can also get more information online about him. So let me talk about the contents of this Bible and just kind of flip through some of these, give you some highlights. So you can see, here's the days of creation, featured here, day 6 and 7, and then about the fall, where we go back to Genesis 3. And you can just see what the illustrations are like. We've got high gloss pages. It's high quality. And even at the list price of $30, I would say this book is well worth it. And you can get it on Amazon in the US at least for half that price. The illustrations are superb, and drawings are very professional. It is refreshing for me as an adult to see the stories of the Bible in a graphic novel format of such high quality, which is one of the reasons that I think even adults should read this. You can also read and discuss the stories with your kids if you're a parent, which I think you should do. And so you can see some of the details here. Reading the Bible with such fantastic drawings, it really brings it alive. So this is about Noah and the ark and some of the patriarchal stories in Genesis, which there's a lot to cover here. Let me flip ahead to Tower of Babel. We've got Abraham and Sarah featured here. So a lot of the pages have the black frame or outline in them, and so there's high contrast in the use of color, whether it's black or white. And you can see also comic book style writing in these text boxes and these bubbles for speaking parts and dialogue by the characters. And it really is a graphic novel or a comic book format, which again is kind of refreshing. Let me go ahead and show you a couple of things, some other stories. Look at this. Parting of the Red Sea with the Exodus, people of Israel leaving Egypt. And look at those blues really come alive. So we get all the Bible stories, the major stories of the Bible featured here. I'm going to go ahead to show some other things. This is the story of Jonah in the well, or the large fish. I like this. You wouldn't normally think about some of the prophetic books lending themselves to story, but Isaiah 6, there's a good story about the call of Isaiah, and gorgeous illustration about the vision of God, or the heavenly vision that Isaiah received in the temple. And so really interesting there. Story about Hezekiah's healing. So there are selective treatments from the prophetic books of the Old Testament, just not in depth. Let's go. Tell you what, just before the life of Jesus, this is about the captives returning from Babylonian captivity. And as I mentioned earlier, there's a little bit in here about the years between the testaments, between the Old and the New Testament. And filling in from Malachi, those 400 years until Matthew, that when we flip from Old to New Testament, sometimes we skip over and don't realize the amount of years and what actually happened in that time before Jesus arrives on the scene. And so this does a good job in terms of the story of explaining the background to the New Testament and the rise of Rome in the meantime and how they took over from the Greeks. And then we get to the New Testament. So the life of Jesus is featured here. You can also see, again, illustrations like the calming of the sea really brings alive the story as either a young reader is reading it or even someone with adult eyes is reading it. And you'll see things new and fresh because they're not really story format, but we do get the background of that. Some of Paul's letters are mentioned kind of in passing with maps. You can see he mentions what's in the letter a little bit. The previous one, Romans, and then Corinthians, Ephesians. So that's kind of how much we get from the letters. One thing I do like, though, that he mentions, or that this book treats, is some of the background, historical background, which is not in the Bible, but like in the 60s, 64 AD, Nero and the burning of Rome, which gives us background to some of the persecution of Christians in the first century. And that is the backdrop for some of the New Testament writings. And so that is really interesting. He brings it alive with the illustrations. And of course, tradition says that Paul was executed in Rome sometime in the 60s. Mention the last couple of pages, talk about Revelation, which also brings to a climax and a summation the entire storyline of the Bible. And so that's what this book is really good for, is featuring that big picture storyline of the entire Bible. So as you can see from the detailed walkthrough that we just did, I highly recommend this particular Bible, especially for kids 10 and above, for teenagers, for adults as well. I think you'll get a lot from this particular format of, it's a storybook Bible, and so it's not the entire biblical text, but it is an introduction, and I think for that purpose it really does the job quite well. I recommend it. I think you will not regret having a copy of this, or maybe you want to bless someone in the family or in your circle with a copy of this, maybe for a family with young kids, that you just want to give them something that will really introduce them to God's Word and to the biblical story, and something that kids can really get engrossed in and immersed in, that doesn't have a bright screen staring at them. There's something really valuable in this that I think would be a blessing to them as well. It's not for everyone, though. I think some people have shown some concern or expressed this in online reviews about some of the illustrations are graphic or violent in some cases. I don't think that's a problem so much for kids that are double digits, 10 and up, but for younger kids, it might be an issue. In fact, it's not appropriate for young children. And so there is an audiobook or an audio CD version of the Action Bible for listening that I think would be useful. Of course, you miss the images, which can really hold the interest. But if just for mobile or getting out and getting the graphic novel kind of treatment, which is summarized stories told with an action orientation, I think there could be some real usefulness and some value from the audio version of the Action Bible that we've been reviewing here. However, if you do have those young kids and you want to give them something, the Action Storybook Bible, which is also produced by David C. Cook, and it's oriented to ages 4 to 8. It focuses on 15 key episodes in the Bible, uses large images and single text block. It's less busy. I think it's more age appropriate for the young kids especially. And so you might want to check that one out. I've got links to these down below, and just encourage you, if you want to get a copy of this, especially on Amazon, you can link to this below in our details. If you want an actual Bible with the full Bible text, but with this quality of illustration that you just saw, there are 2 editions, the ESV or English Standard Version and the NIV, the New International Version of the Action Bible, that is available, and it runs to 1,250 pages each. The paper is not as thick as the Action Bible, but you get more illustrations, you get the full biblical text inside. So that may be something to check out as well. I hope this has been useful. Give us comments and let us know what you thought about this, and hopefully we'll do more of these in the future, and you can follow us in our channel. We've also got resources, a daily Bible podcast called First 15 that you can check out on our channel here as well.